Thank you, PJ. It is time for another edition of the Pair and a Spare podcast. We are presented, as always, by our great partners and friends at Jack's Cafe. I'm Justin Gaard from The Fan. We've got Chip Scoggins from Football Across Minnesota, where if you have an idea that you'd like Chip to consider for Football Across Minnesota, please hit him on Twitter at Chip Scoggins. He would love to talk with you. And Ryan Burns, GopherIllustrated.com. You can catch him on Gopher Gridiron Radio. We're recording a couple of days late this week, as we said on last week's episode, because Chip had to fend off a couple of listeners who were very disappointed that we had not dropped a Pair and a Spare podcast episode this week. We wanted to let Burnsy get all National Signing Day stuff out of the way, maybe take a shower, maybe have a rum runner after which used to be a much crazier December. Now it's just season's over. Here's recruiting day. And so we wanted to get all of that out of the way in case there were any surprises or anything to discuss. But Burnsy, before we hit record, you nailed it. It feels like what a month this last week has been since we last chatted in the world of college football. Hi, guys.
Yeah, hi. It's been between signing day. Somehow the Wisconsin game feels like 2 months ago at this point, between all the different things that have happened, but with college football afterwards, with all the fights, signing day, coaching carousel stuff. We've got a lot to talk about today, even with the Heisman coming up this weekend, which, Chip, I want to pass this to you. Are you one of the people, I know this is one of the things that I've seen other Heisman voters on social media talk about. Are you one of the people who place their votes before this weekend of conference championship games? Are you after? Do you have a strong opinion either way, or where do you fall on that?
I voted. I have voted.
You've seen enough.
I've seen enough. I feel like I know how I want to vote, so I have voted. But we're going to keep that secret until next episode.
I don't want to know who you voted for, but I guess I would say...
You can't say. It's a rule. We're going to get kicked out of the club.
Correct. So I'm trying to make sure he follows the rules. Me telling the Heisman president to follow the rules is very rich. But why before the games? Just because you feel like nothing that happens this weekend will change your opinion so much on who your top three were?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's pretty clear cut in my mind. I wouldn't let sometimes I wait. Sometimes I wait until after the final games are done. But I feel pretty comfortable with who I think is the best player in college football this year.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. First of all, I love it that, Chip, you do it the second that you can. It's just classic you.
Yeah.
It's
that is very Chip. Yeah.
I actually waited a few days. I waited a few days after getting the ballot.
Nothing bothers me more than the yearly scolding that some of the Heisman Trophy vote protectors get out here and say, if you vote before all the games and you're not following the evidence and your vote should be taken away and there's too many anyway. We get so precious about who gets a vote and why and what they get to do with it. I have no problem with you voting before the final game. I have not yet. I will wait. I don't think anything that will happen this weekend will sway the way I'm leaning either, but I'll leave the possibility open. And I guess I'm appeasing the terrorists that get mad at people that vote beforehand, but I have no issue with that. None.
Yeah. I've like I said, I've done it both ways. Particularly if there's, I'm on the fence or I'm just, kind of want to wait and see how it goes, or if there's trying to decide. But I think I've seen enough. I just feel like I know how I wanted to vote.
There you go. Yeah, I'm always curious. I'm not saying any way is right or wrong. I'm just always curious because, to Guardsy's point, there's a lot of people who love to protect the votes that way.
Well, yeah. It happened. Was it last year where there was? It happened in the last couple of years where it became a big thing, where something happened in the last week and everybody who voted before got screamed at by the the protectors of the Heisman.
Like that, yeah.
And I can't even remember this. I just remember it. Like I said, I think I typically wait until afterwards, but I just did this week.
I need a pledge from the two of you because you guys are friends of mine, even though a year and a half ago when you both agreed that I didn't look okay and I didn't look right, you didn't say anything to me and let me just hospitalize myself. I've let that go. If I ever get to the point where I start lecturing people on their Heisman vote, or you see me with some random social media posts, just know it's over for me. And
you get off my lawn and you're shaking your fist at the sky, Grandpa.
If I ever take myself that seriously, just feel free to kick me out of the podcast club. I'll give you the logins. I'll give you everything you need to know. You keep going. I'll get you Bill's number, even though I think you have it. I'm not, if I ever take myself that seriously to lecture somebody about when they do their Heisman vote and how and all of that, then it's over for me. I've officially become a self-absorbed media person. I'm trying not to do that. And hopefully I have succeeded in the most part, but I feel like you would tell me if I haven't. But if I ever get to that point, just know it's over. I will not, you can take my keys away. Take my keys away.
I love voting in the Heisman. I still think it's the coolest award. I take it seriously, but not so seriously that I'm going to lecture somebody about how and when and all that. They should, it's like anybody can do it how they want. You can vote for whoever you want. I mean, I don't even mind out there votes where you're like, you know what? I saw this player. I thought he was the best player I saw all year, and I think he's the best player in college football. I'm voting. I mean, that's your prerogative. That's
why you have different states. I mean, that is why
exactly. Yeah.
Because you see different players, you see different matchups, and trust me, as much as we all watch college football, we're not watching the all 22 of every team, even the good teams, right? Even the good teams. Like, you're not catching everything as much as well-intentioned as you might be. So anyway, all right, well, we'll talk about that next week. That'll be exciting. And then that gets announced Saturday after the Army-Navy game. Typically that gets announced. But we do have a regular season to discuss that is now wrapped up for your Minnesota Golden Gophers. If you're a Gopher fan listening to this podcast, and a lot of you are, they went into Camp Randall on a Black Friday. The entire Pair and a Spare pod had boots on the ground in Madison. Just a wonderful press box in Madison for a school that just says they take football and sports seriously. Just a great working environment. I just love it. And I love that they give you guys so much time after the game to write.
You're going to get it going here.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying. I'm going to try to get you guys to do what I usually do, which is rant about things that people don't really care about.
That they don't care about, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't affect them.
We have it so tough as the sports media. You know that.
But it is worth noting, yeah. So 24-7 was the final, and it should not have been that close, if not for a ridiculous penalty by poor Joey Gerlach. My goodness, buddy. That extended a drive for Wisconsin and then allowed them in the end zone. And then things got a little weird. I described the environment before that play as the Thursday Thanksgiving post-turkey hangover, where you're just looking to take a nap in a chair and watch some football. That was the Camp Randall vibe before that. After that, it felt like Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving. You're with all your buddies that you only see once a year, and things are about to get weird. And then it quickly went back to food coma.
Yeah.
But that could have been 35-rip or 35-3 or 42-10 or whatever it was. As it was, the Gophers won very comfortably. They got the missed field goal that they needed. They went down and got the Kesich field goal to kind of make it a 3-score game and allow that nothing weird was going to happen. But that was a dominating axe performance by the Gophers, Chip Scoggins.
Yeah, it was heading for a shutout. I think it was going to be a shutout the way their defense is playing. The Gophers dominated them in the trenches in a way that I haven't seen, I don't know, in this rivalry, particularly defensively. I mean, Wisconsin couldn't run the ball. I give a lot of credit. I want to give a real shout out to Max Brosmer. Walking to that stadium, it was freaking cold. And as you know, and the way that wind was blowing, I thought, I don't know how they're going to throw the ball today. And it did not affect him. He just looked so under control and precise. And, I talked with PJ about this after the game. He hit a home run with that portal edition. Max Brosmer, we'll say it now that the season's over. Well, they still have the bowl game. But it's a damn shame that they don't get more than 1 year out of him, because he is a really good college quarterback. Not only just throwing the ball, but his leadership, how smart he is, the way he processes, the way everybody kind of gravitates around him. That guy had a heck of a year, a really, really good year. And I thought he was great. I thought he was fantastic that day in those conditions to be able to throw the ball and make some of those, deep throws and on the money throws. I can't say enough good things about him. I think he's been a heck of a player for them.
Yeah, I think if you were to give an MVP vote, or maybe not even an MVP, but just the most valuable player in terms of, if Max Brosmer is not on this team, I don't know what the record would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, if Ethan would have been the quarterback, I don't think Minnesota gets to a bowl game. That's not a shot at Ethan, but more so how good Max was in a lot of huge spots for them throughout the entire year. He was really good against Wisconsin. And you mentioned how he played in cold weather conditions, and that's where I go back to just even talking to some people over there where, New Hampshire, where he was coming from, did not have an indoor practice facility for spring ball. So there were mornings that I've heard that they're practicing at 5:30 in the morning in New Hampshire in March, and it's below zero. And so when he gets into these conditions here in Madison, where it wasn't quite that, what do you think, Guardsy? You were down there on the field, 15, 20 degrees?
Yeah, it was
with
cold.
That wind, though. With that wind, I looked at it before
cold.
kickoff. It said 0 with wind chill.
Yeah, and the second half, when the sun kind of went down and it got a little grayer, and then the snow came. First half was cold, but you guys see what I'm wearing. I'm totally geared up, and everybody's staying warm, and you're moving around a little bit. But the second half felt a lot colder. The wind picked up a little bit. The sun went down. It started snowing. There weren't as many people there for body heat. Yeah. People started screaming out. I don't know if that affects me on the field as much, but there weren't as many people there. Yeah, it was cold, and it did not affect Brosmer. You're right. After the first couple of drives where each team struggled and it looked like it was going to be a 10-7 rock fight, Big Ten West throwback rock fight, yeah, you're right. The shout out, we can't say enough good things about Max Brosmer for the entire season. And was he perfect? Of course not, but he's a college quarterback, and he had moments where he didn't play well. First couple of possessions of North Carolina didn't play well. Guess what? He'd never seen that many people want to watch him play football before. It's his first time in the Big Ten Stadium. Big House, same thing, right? I don't think he necessarily played poorly. The team got down. He almost brought him back in front of 100,000 people. It was an unbelievable season. Just everything, even hearing stuff about him at spring practice, like, I don't know, we'll see. It looks good. Nope, he was good. He was great. And you talked to PJ about this as well, Chip, because I watched the press conference at Madison International Airport on my way to New Orleans. The biggest thing Max Brosmer did that we'll see if it continues to move forward is he was good, but he convinced the head coach to let him be good. Because I was talking with someone about North Carolina today. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
That was old school PJ Fleck. They were still trying to run the ball. Darius Taylor wasn't involved because he was hurt. They were still trying to win the old way and didn't have a ton of possessions because of some turnovers. And once they took the governor off Max Brosmer, there was no looking back. And he convinced the head coach and got the head coach's trust that this is how we have to win.
Well, it was interesting because PJ was talking about, because I asked him first about, and I give him and Greg Harbaugh a lot of credit because, you had a quarterback that was won the Heisman at FCS, but it's still FCS. It's not Big Ten. But they saw and they believed with their eyes and trusted that whatever they saw was going to be able to translate and he was going to be able to perform at a high level in the Big Ten. So I give them credit for that. And then he said, it takes two. It's like, we had to be right. Not only we have to be right, but he had to be right. And he said, I told basically Max, like, I don't have a plan B right now. Plan B is a true freshman. We can't play a true freshman. This has to be right. And so I asked PJ a follow-up. I said, is it fair to say you changed? He said, yeah, I had to change. And he said, I thought he gave great answers. Like, if you had Mohammed Abraham, you would have run the ball that many times too. And we don't have a Mohammed. And I had to change it. And I do think that he changed with the personnel, because you go back to 2019, they threw the ball more. But I go back and I looked at those stats. If in the bowl game, the averages are what they are in terms of throwing the ball, 30, whatever, they will have thrown the ball 100 more times this year than in 219.
Yep.
Yes, PJ adapts to his personnel, but if you don't think he changed fundamentally, you're not really paying attention. He threw the ball 100 more times this year with a first-year quarterback that he knew nothing about, but hadn't been proven to him, versus when he had Tanner and 2 NFL wide receivers. He absolutely shifted how he looks at things philosophically.
Yeah, to your point, as much as it is Brosmer, I think it's also Greg Harbaugh earning his trust in year 2. Where last year with Ethan in year 1, whether it was Ethan, whether it was Greg just in his first year, the offense wasn't very good at all. And they took steps forward everywhere, third down, scoring, passing, wherever you want to look. Now, the run game is going to have to be something that Harbaugh improves on in his third year. But they gave PJ the ability to trust a play caller again. I mean, I think to some of the play calls against USC, UCLA, or even in this last game with the fake tush push on 3rd and 1, goes around the end. I mean, we saw them finally get creative, or Fleck allow the offensive coordinator to be creative in different spots. And it all goes hand in hand. It's all symbiotic, where the quarterback, if you trust him and you trust the offensive play caller that he's going to be able to have the quarterback deliver in these huge spots, then they can do as we finally have been asking for the duration of this podcast. Instead of just run right, run left, run middle, be a little bit creative, and which we certainly saw, I'd argue, as much as we've seen in the Fleck tenure from a play caller.
Well, I do say, what was the game we talked about in here? I can't remember what it was, where Fleck said, "We're really going to run that play?" But he let him do it.
UCLA game where they ran the Lemecki screen on like 3rd and 2.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that play because I remember looking at Fleck down on the field and he's crouched on the field picking grass because he's so nervous about the play call. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, this is going to be a doozy if he's this worked up about it. And they end up converting, and then Darius scores on that 4th down. But it was refreshing to see just Fleck change, because you noted it, Chip. And I thought that answer he gave to your follow-up was arguably one of the best answers he gave all year, with how thoughtful and transparent it was. Is he finally adapted to what this team was, which was a throw it to run it team.
Yeah, and I do wonder if he never admitted, we never get it, but like how many times would he have called off a play or overridden, put a stop on Harbaugh? Like, no, we're going to do this. Or were there fewer of those occasions this year, you think, where he just said, maybe not treat it the way I do my defense, where that guy has carte blanche to do whatever, but I'm not going to interfere, or I'm not going to, dictate what the offensive coordinator wants to do. I bet there's far more or less of that this year than what we've seen. And it speaks to your trust in Harbaugh.
Yeah, it's trust in Harbaugh, it's trust in Brosmer, and now next year's offense will be a lot different with Drake Lindsay more than likely heading that thing up. But it's encouraging to see that a guy who is as conservative as he is as a head coach was able to adapt with the times, and because of that, his team outperformed national expectations by a win, 2 wins compared to what they were preseason. And you're able to go into Madison and probably should have had 24 or 34 points on the day. But the offense, I think, allowed him to trust again, which is certainly a lot. There's a lot to discuss with that going into the offseason.
Yeah, it was a great year. And it's amazing how 11 months, what an impact the guy can have on a program, on a coach, on maybe the next quarterback. And it was just fun to watch every single week. It was just an enjoyable. How many times did we get on the pod and it was, 16-10 and it was ugly, it was choppy, defense had to save you. Fans don't want to watch that. And I know you can't appease fans, but I think people really enjoyed the season, at least the fans I talked to. And Burnsy, you live in fandom. I mean, they are all around you. I think everybody had a really enjoyable season, even though there were some games you'd like to have back, and we could certainly talk about that. But you also went down and won some games that looked like you were dead and buried, and you had a guy bring you back a couple of different times. It just was an enjoyable season, and that all goes back to the kid. I just think he was spectacular.
Well, I think it's one of the most entertaining Gopher seasons that I've seen, because
you had an opportunity to win all 12 games on the schedule.
But it was just like the way they played, the style of play, where it's just like grinding, like, it was like 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 5, we're going to run the ball. Yeah, it was, and not to say that it wasn't effective and it put you in a position to win games, but it's just like, it felt like just you had such a low ceiling. And here it was like, now you're throwing the ball around, and you mentioned trust. I mean, think about when's the last time you trusted their quarterback to go win a game.
19, but
win a game, not to go manage a game.
To go win a game.
To go win it, and to go win it at any point in the game too, not just because you had to, right? Remember that we'd go 90 minutes without a pass, in real time.
Yeah.
in old years. And then, oh shoot, we gave up a play or we fumbled, and now we're trailing with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Go ahead and win the game on an 80-yard drive, and you haven't thrown it in 2 hours. Doesn't work.
Fleck, and Fleck mentioned it too. Like, I loved the press conferences with Broser, because you could tell how smart the guy was and how committed he was to, like, what he say is like, when you're winning or something, it makes it easy to get to work at 5 a.m. Like, he treated this like a job, right? Like, this is what it was.
That's what he was here for.
But PJ's like, it's not easy for a guy to come in 1 year and know everybody's names and earn the trust and have everybody look up to him the way that he did. It takes a special personality to do that, to become the leader, the undeniable guy in, when was that bowl game last year? It was basically 12 months, right?
Less.
He was here. He was 12 months. He was in part of this program. And you look at the way he is viewed in that facility, it speaks a lot about his character too.
Mm-hmm.
The other people we need to ode before we maybe talk a little bit about Wisconsin too and what they're going to do here. I don't think we've talked enough about Daniel Jackson.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about him. He comes up. I was talking with Tommy Olson on my Gopher pod this week, and we all remember the Max Williams catch against Iowa, the one where it looked like it was impossible that he caught it, and then they replayed it, and the pellets flew up.
The rubber pellets, yeah.
He got his feet in, and I remember that. We all remember watching that play 10 years ago, basically. Daniel Jackson has one of those every week almost, where there's no way he caught that. Oh, wait, we're going to review it. Oh, yeah, caught it. Yep, first down Gophers. Whether it's the Nebraska one, obviously there was a huge one 2 years ago. The Michigan one this year, where I'm still confused how the official doesn't see it. But I think it was because Daniel's body was completely contorted backwards and he didn't know what to look at. And then the catch, it's just a little 5-yard out or whatever it was, but he just makes the play. Like, it's not a great throw. It's not like a game-saving catch or anything, but that's just the dude that he is. Like, if you throw it to him, he's going to catch it. And I think he's 4th all-time now, right, Burnsy? I'm sure you have all the stats. And obviously he had an extra year with COVID to be here and do all of that. But what a career. What a career. And you want to talk about trust. I mean, when they needed something, Daniel was getting it from Max. And obviously Elijah Spencer had a good season and a good game the other day. But what a career Daniel Jackson had. Unbelievable.
He's probably going to go down as one of the least talked about gifted receivers, because you look at some of the names on the list ahead of him, and he passed Tutu Atwell to become 4th all time during that Wisconsin game. He's just a guy that got better every single year. And you look at last year, took the step to be the receiver 1, and now going into this past season, which I still don't understand how he isn't making all Big Ten lists. He's
not flashy. That's the other thing. He makes the play and then just gives the ball back. Like he's not, and again, that's who he is, but he doesn't have these epic celebrations. They're not like explosive plays all the time where he's, taking the top off the defense for a 75-yard touchdown. He just makes the play and goes back to make the next one. And so I just think it's that lack of flash that people that aren't really watching, like we were talking about with the Heisman stuff, aren't paying attention to that the dude just makes plays, but I cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, you're fine. It's just I don't understand a couple of things with those all Big Ten lists, but that's here nor there. I just think for what he was able to accomplish from the day he came in to the day he left, I thought he was going to be good coming in. He was a highly touted recruit, just on that border of being a 4-star. But the way he just put his head down and worked year after year after year and got better, and you could see him get better, and you saw him make big-time plays and big-time moments. And to me, he's going to be one of the best receivers I probably cover. Now, this is my 14th year, like it is yours, Guardsy. But I think when people mention the names Bateman and Johnson and Ron Johnson and the other names, Eric Decker, I think I don't want to be the guy that's going to have to interject and say, well, Daniel Jackson too. But I feel like that's the kind of the career that he had.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not the biggest guy, not the fastest, not the most explosive, but to me, he's like just super reliable.
Right.
Like if you throw the ball in his direction, he's going to catch it, no matter how. He had a couple of tough catches there Saturday, and I was thinking he makes tough catches look pretty routine. Like it's just you see it so often that you almost take it for granted. And no, I mean, I had a chance to cover. Obviously, I didn't cover Ron, but Deck and Bateman and Johnson, and I mean those guys were special. But to me, he's just I think his reliability to me is what he just when you threw it to him, he caught it. There's something to be said about that. Whether it's an easy catch, a routine catch, or a really hard catch, he caught it. And so, another great career.
Well, I also want to
go ahead.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Elijah Spencer too, where
Yeah.
I said it, later after the game, but Elijah Spencer, to me, in the day and age of the transfer portal, is the exception and not the rule. Where you look at what happened to him in his first year after transferring from Charlotte, 9 catches. It doesn't go the way that he thought it was going to go, the way that Minnesota thought it was going to go. But instead of transferring and kind of blaming the situation, he stuck it out. He put his head down. He continued to work. And that was one of the things he talked about with us in the media before the season was at Charlotte, he could just show up to the building and he was going to be the best player. When he showed up to Minnesota, he had to learn new practice habits. And to see a guy go from what he had for a type of role in 2023 to in 2024, he quadruples his catches, ends up with 46 receptions for over 600 yards. You look at that Wisconsin game specifically, 5 catches, 5 first downs. I mean, he was such a reliable receiver, especially once Big Ten play hit. I just want to commend him because it's so easy in this new world of college football to, it didn't work out for me. Woe is me. Let me put my name into the portal, go try it somewhere else. He stuck it out. And I don't know, maybe it's me being the old head of just saying, good for you for not, when adversity hit, you stuck through it and you were rewarded with almost a 50 catch season.
Well, and he had self-awareness about it. He talked to all of us about that and saying, I didn't do the things I needed to do to be good at this level. I had to own that and I had to change that. And I think to bring it back to Jackson, he's a good example. And the story's been told, but I remember waiting for him for a pregame interview while he was catching his 100 to 150 after practice jugs machine balls. First of all, he starts like right at the jugs machine. For the people on YouTube, like if you're the jugs machine, his hands are right here and his face is right behind it and it fires it right there. And I'm like, so Grim and I were trying to figure out how much money it would cost to have one of us try to do that because it's going to break our nose. It's going to go right through our hands. So he starts there and then he comes back and does all these things. This is a creepy thing for anybody watching the YouTube channel, by the way.
I can't wait for the GIF of this later.
Yeah. You'll send it. I know that. So the other story that I'll tell about D-Jack before we maybe take a break and come back and talk about some other things is he and Max filled in for PJ on the PJ Fleck radio show after the UCLA game. So after the Darius Taylor play, after that win or whatever, they were awesome. They were great. But we started talking to Daniel about his catches. And I think this was after the show. People were talking about the Nebraska catch and they bought the shirt from Dinkytown Athletes and all that. And he just kind of said, for a humble guy, which he is, kind of said, I got to be honest. You talk about the catch. He goes, the route was way better. He just left that guy. He just left the Nebraska guy peeking in on the slant. He goes, I'm about the route, man. The route to me was what was key to that whole thing. And that's what I appreciate about him is, Chip, you mentioned the stuff he makes look easy. How many, the over-the-shoulder catch at Wisconsin? Like, those are tough catches. And not only does he catch them, but he goes about them in the way that the defensive back doesn't know the ball's coming. Which game was it? Was it UCLA where he just, or maybe even Rutgers, he just kind of like, he just dead arms the ball, slows himself down. He can track it, barely looking, and it's just right in his hands. And the defensive back's looking around like, they threw it to you? I thought the play was over. He's so technically sound. And that you don't get that technically sound unless you work. I hate the word craft. It gets overused. Work at your craft. One of the new buzzwords. But that dude works at his craft. And you can tell by how he runs his routes, how he gets open, how he finishes them, all the technique stuff. Because I think I asked him about it the next week, one of the catches, and he broke down the exact technique. Well, I did this, and I did this with my arm, and then you've got this to the boundary, and blah, 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 and then the ball's there. Like, yeah, okay. Makes sense. So, hell of a career. It doesn't sound like he's going to play the bowl game. I tried to put him on the spot and get the emotional response on the field. I said, hey, Max and Quinn said they're in. What are you thinking about the bowl game? Yeah, we're going to talk about some things. So, my response to Daniel was, it's been fun watching you, bud. We'll see you in Charlotte on the sideline. If you'd like to join us in the first or second quarter on the Gophers Sports Network, we'd love to have you. But I got the indication he was not going to be playing in that bowl game. Let's talk about bowl games and some other stuff when we come back. But first, let's talk about Jack's Cafe, our great partner. Jack's Cafe, been in Minneapolis forever, generation after generation after generation. And this time next week, guys, I will be giving you the Breakfast with Santa review.
Oh,
the
boy.
Guardsy family, December 7th, 14th, and 21st. The calendar worked out finally where we can actually go. We are shoehorning it in. You will not see anybody take a picture with Santa quicker or have assorted pastries, beignets, gingerbread pancakes, eggs Benedict waffles, scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage, cheesy hash browns, French toast sticks, mac and cheese, fresh fruit, Jell-O juice boxes, and holiday cookies quicker than we will be doing it at Jack's Cafe on Saturday. But it's Breakfast with Santa time in the next 3 Saturdays, the 7th, 14th, and 21st. Bring your kids. Seatings are 9 to 11. You can check out the menu and learn more at jaxcafe.com, jaxcafe.com, and I will give you a full review of the very popular Breakfast with Santa experience next week on the pod. And I'm sure you guys are making your plans, Burnsy, for your next Jack's Cafe appearance.
I actually just made a reservation this morning for a little Christmas dinner, because now that I know that I will likely be here for Christmas, as there's no more Christmas in Detroit possibility, which thank all of the heavens above. Now I can start to kind of plan out a little bit, and that's where me and my lovely wife will be going out there. I will continue to die on the hill of, I've said it before, I'll say it again, best steak in town. And I know there's a lot of great steak places. The filet there is the best filet I've had. So if you're a steak guy, go prove me wrong, Chip.
Yeah, I'm gonna make my reservation. I'm gonna test that theory, and I don't doubt you're wrong. I'm typically the halibut guy there. I love their halibut.
Big fish guy after my own heart.
I love their halibut. I'd say
the
kind of my go-to there.
Good too.
Yeah, and they have a great salad. Start it there. Mashed potatoes, and then the creme brulee. That's kind of my go-to. But I'm going to have the steak this time. I'm going to have a sometime over Christmas a dinner there, and I don't doubt that it's the best steak in town, and I'm looking forward to trying it.
Halibut, walleye, salad, brunches, whatever it is. Christmas, dinner with Santa, jaxcafe.com to make your reservation. Support those that support us. Bill's been an awesome supporter. His whole group, the service is tremendous. The matchbooks are an amazing touch. The trout, you can't see right now because it's 8 degrees, but they'll be back. They'll be back next summer when they open that patio. And so when you get there, tell Bill that you were there because of the Pair and a Spare pod. He loves to meet listeners. And like we said, we were season ticket holders to Golden Gopher football this year because of Jack's Cafe. You guys got to go to every single game this year, which is awesome. So support those that support us. And if you are at Breakfast with Santa on Saturday, please don't judge me for my parenting with how my kids act. All right. I'm doing my best, but please come over and say hi, and we'll see you at Jack's Cafe. Reservations at jaxcafe.com. Burnsy just alluded to it. The Detroit possibility is officially over now that the Gophers are 7-5. They've got Paul Bunyan's axe, by the way, for the 4th time in 8 years, which equals, I think I've heard you say this, Ryan, the number of times the Gophers had the axe in your lifetime before PJ Fleck got here. Is that correct?
Yep.
I think that's worth noting as well. Like when he got here, the axe was a rumor. There were teenagers in Wisconsin that did not know a world without Paul Bunyan's axe at the Camp Randall football facility, whatever they call it. So I think some credit should be given there for igniting this rivalry, or at least getting into the rivalry like they weren't before.
Well, yeah, and that's where, when I grew up, the axe was a theory. I mean, for largely my entire childhood, because they never had it. 4 times before PJ Fleck got here. Now he's 4-4. I do want to note, before we can fully transition away from it, we didn't talk any about the defense. The defense was fantastic. I know they didn't force a turnover or a takeaway, but under 170 total yards. How many times over the years, and you guys would know better than me, have you seen a Wisconsin or Iowa mediocre quarterback turn into the next Patrick Mahomes?
Too many.
Against the Gophers over the years, too many times. They kept a bad quarterback bad. They kept a bad offense bad. And they were able to force, I think, 8 or 9 straight 3-and-outs before the Joey Gerlach thing. I think they would have probably ended up shutting out Wisconsin. So Corey Heatherman and that defense, I think, deserve a lot of credit for that victory too. But
they tackled well. They tackled like really well.
Yeah. Coy Parrish and Cody Lindenberg, I think, had a couple of their better games of the season, especially Coy in the run game.
Yeah.
Well, and for the season, I think, we were just doing kind of the season-long ode for Max. It's got to be a season-long ode for Corey Heatherman. When we got the news a year or so ago that Joe Rossi was moving on, I'm sure the message boards were not loving that, Burnsy, right? With how important he was to the program. Maybe the most important decision that PJ made in 2018 was firing Rob Smith and elevating Rossi. It changed the trajectory of where the program was going. The defense was horrific under Rob Smith. Mm-hmm. And Rossi made it top 10 pretty much every single year except for last year's debacle, right? And it was such a surprise to see a Joe Rossi defense play that poorly. There were reasons for it, not excuses. but reasons. There were reasons for it. And here comes Corey Heatherman, who brings in a completely different vibe and energy and just aggressiveness. And no one knew how that was going to turn out. And guy put together, I don't know, you might know the numbers off the top of your head, Burnsy, but top 10-ish type defense again, right? That really played well for the bulk of the season. Hats off to him. It's a heck of a year for him as a coordinator.
Yeah, especially for coming in your first year, learning what your personnel does really well, and then adapting your scheme to the players, which is what always should happen. But that's what really successful coordinators do. And I think you saw that. That's why Minnesota forced 20 turnovers on the season, I believe. Now, they go the final 10 quarters of the year without forcing a takeaway. They were hot and cold at times, but in total defense, they ended up top 20. I don't know how else you can kind of look at the season defensively and not be encouraged for what they had personnel-wise, for what they were able to accomplish. Yeah, I think for year one of a system that you go from playing very vanilla, I would say, under Rossi, you knew what the scheme was going to be, bend, don't break, to more the helter-skelter style of play. For what the players had to learn and how they executed in the first year, that's definitely a success for me.
Yeah, under Rossi, we always said that you felt like guys were going to be in the right spot, like technically, fundamentally in the right spot. And last year was a disaster, and that was not always the case. But when they were good, they're always in the right spot, and they pretty much tackled. This defense, I felt like, really flew around, and their line, I don't know what their sack total was, but I felt like when they were rolling, they created a lot of bad throws, a lot of rush throws, and that led to interceptions. Coy back there playing center field or whoever. And, we're the two biggest stats in football, explosive plays and turnovers, and they did a really good job with the turnovers. And I think if you can do that and still be disciplined, that's when you have a really good defense. So, but first year, to create that kind of chaos with your defense and force quarterbacks into wild throws, which I think we saw a lot this year.
Yep.
You got to give him credit for that.
Well, and to use the word we used in the first segment on the offense, it was a fun defense to watch.
Yeah.
It was fun because they were going to be disruptive. They were going to be in the backfield. The games that, the Rutgers game, that first half was such a departure of what they had done the entire season. It was so weird. They had no second and longs. They had no third and longs. It was all for second and manageable, no pressure on the quarterback. And that's why it stood out so much, because the whole year they had just lived in the opponent's backfield one way or the other and created those explosive plays defensively going the other way, or the turnovers and just the havoc that they seemed to wreak on people. And that's what also made it a fun team to watch, was defensively they had a bunch of playmakers. Burnsy, I know you were wondering in preseason who are the playmakers going to be on this defense, specifically in the secondary, and they had the answers for those questions with a lot of guys that could find their way around the ball.
Yeah, I still think even the season that Coy had, where ends up leading the Big Ten in interceptions, that's like a 99th percentile outcome for even me and my lofty expectations for him coming into the season, where I can't remember a time Winfield had some moments early on. Newbin had a lot more ups and downs, so did Howden, but the way he was able to come in, and I think early when he finally started to get the opportunities, it was through the air. But the thing for me with Coy down the stretch in November is the way he tackled, the way he was physical on the run game. He didn't back down from anything. And that's probably the most amount of snaps he's played, especially at that high of a level against that type of physicality. And it came to, I think, one of his best games of the season against Wisconsin in the run game. And just the way he was able to not be intimidated from the word go this summer. Again, what a season for him. Yeah. What a season.
Well, he had that play against Wisconsin.
Well, I just want to mention first team All Big Ten defensive back, second team All Big Ten return specialist, finalist for the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year Award, involving players from Alabama, Ohio State, South Carolina, and Texas. That's pretty good company. That's pretty good company to be in for Coy, but go ahead.
Well, and he had that play Saturday or Friday, whenever it was, where he came flying in off the edge and he made that tackle right at the line. I was like, he looked like he was shot out of a cannon there. Like, I didn't see him do that. We saw the interceptions early in the year, but that was like to diagnose that play, and I'm going right now, and he hit that running back right at the line or behind line. That was impressive. But look at their defense as a whole. I mean, the coordinator obviously deserves credit, but I think Justin Wally's going to be an NFL player. I think Cody Lindenberg is going to be an NFL player. I think Josh Joyner will, although I don't think he had a great season, but I think NFL people will look at his frame, and I think Anthony Smith in time looks like an NFL player. Who knows with Coy? I mean, they had some talent on that defense. I mean, they had some playmakers. They had some dudes on there. So they have some guys I think are going to play in the NFL that, for the most part, had good years. When we saw when Cody gets healthy, he's one of the best linebackers in the league. I mean, he's really good.
First team all Big Ten from the coaches, man.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good, physical, aggressive guy that runs through the ball. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the scheme fit good with the personnel and what those guys do well.
Yeah, and you got Ja accepting the Senior Bowl invite last night, which I think puts about I'd say a 99% chance that's the last snap you saw him play was in Madison.
Right.
I don't think he'll probably play in the bowl game. Cody Lindenberg is still weighing his decisions between cashing out his chips to go test the NFL waters or come back for a sixth season. But they had talent. And even for someone like Justin Wally, where we talked about coming into the season, his 2023, I think, was fine, but he kind of stagnated. I don't think he got a lot better between year 2 and 3 as the starter. Well, this year I felt like he really took that step in his 4th year as the guy, accepted a Shrine Bowl invitation here today, second team all Big Ten. You had talent and you were able to deploy it. And that's where they were able to be as aggressive as Heatherman wanted, because you had Wally and Robinson and you trusted Coy Parrish ultimately down the stretch too in some big moments to cover in man coverage. And now next year it's going to be a very different defense without some of these key names.
And will Heatherman be atop that, Ryan Burns? Because your message board is very worried that Joe Harris-Simiak is on his way to be a head coach at UMass, which means the defensive coordinator spot at Rutgers is now open. Mm-hmm. It just apparently Greg Schiano's out of ideas. When he loses a coach, he just looks at the Minnesota staff and makes a call and says, "We're all from the East Coast. You want to come back?" And more often than not, the guys do. Whether it's current offensive coordinator or Harris-Simiak, obviously a little while ago. I'm not as concerned about Corey Heatherman leaving, and I'm also not concerned with replacing him as much because I do think they're ready to give Danny Collins more responsibility if and when Heatherman left. I don't think it's going to be this year, but I do think that they like Danny Collins that much and think that highly of him that they might just elevate him at this point, even though he's a young coach. But what do you think? What are you hearing along? Do you want to pour water on that rumor? Nothing would surprise us in college sports, as we know,
right?
And it makes sense for all the obvious reasons that he used to work for Schiano and just had an unbelievable year as a coordinator. Do you worry that he's going back to Piscataway, one of your favorite towns?
I mean, I worry, but I would say I'm a lot less worried than I have been for the Joe Rossi thing or the Kirk Scirocco or Joe Harris-Simiak, because at the end of the day, a lot of people can say things, but I think money talks the loudest. And that's where when Flex signed Heatherman, he put language into the contract, which if Heatherman were to leave for another Big Ten coaching job, that's not head coach, say he goes back to Rutgers to be the defensive coordinator, Rutgers' buyout for him would be roughly $900,000 plus or minus $100,000. Whereas Rossi, when he went to Michigan State, was about $330,000. That's a lot more manageable. Harris-Simiak was, I think, about $100,000. Scirocco was less than Rossi. So that's a lot of money to pay for a buyout, and then you have to give him a raise. Now, from what I understand from digging around on this in the first 24 hours since that news came out about Harris-Simiak, I think Heatherman stays. I think he'll probably use this as leverage to get more money. He was making about $850,000. I think he'll probably be close to the $1 million mark. I also think Greg Harbaugh should be negotiating for more money as the lowest paid play caller on the offensive side of the ball. But I just think it's such a different situation for Heatherman because of the language in his contract. And he's also, I mean, I think he likes it here, which, okay, hashtag one of us. Guardsy, you're the king of that. But he's got a young family, doesn't want to be moving all the time. I understand that He's got a lot of connections to the East Coast, but I just think that money aspect is something that people have to take into account, is this buyout is exponentially larger than it was for Rossi or Chirac or anybody else.
At some point, Rutgers has got to stop spending so much money because they don't make a lot of money. I know they get the TV money coming, but they've been paying. And I know cost of living out there is a little different than it is here in the Twin Cities. But anyway, so it's worth mentioning that. I agree with you on everything that you just said there, Burnsy.
I do want to say, though, I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts. I think you were going to take us here, but I want to kind of take it away from you. Is what do we think of Wisconsin going forward here? Because the 22-year bowl streak comes to an end. And let me tell you, I mean, they're starting to see transfer Armageddon for them so far here with the portal. They got to figure out quarterback. They got to figure out the offensive coordinator. But their schedule next year, guys,
horrific.
Oh, my goodness.
Horrific.
Chip, let me read off some of these games to you. You ready?
This is horrific. Yeah.
So Wisconsin has road games against Alabama, Michigan, Oregon, Indiana, and Minnesota. And if Minnesota is the easiest road game that you have potentially, you also got Ohio State, Iowa. They start off with the MAC champions and the Miami of Ohio Redhawks.
That was basically their schedule this year. I mean, they had Oregon, Penn State out. Now they got Penn State and Alabama at home, but
but it's worse.
It's interesting. I'm more like Guardsy, that I tend to be more patient than, hey, just fire everybody every 2 years and start over, because I don't think that. However, and this is not to say they should fire Luke Fickell, but that body language of their team felt off. It just felt like a defeated team. Fans are not happy. I don't think administration's happy. The Godfather's not happy.
It just feels like they're going through, for the first time maybe in my lifetime, an identity crisis, or at least here in the last
they are
15, 20 years. And it doesn't get, I'd argue it gets harder next year.
And it's a weird situation for Fickell, because it's like, again, people still, Alvarez cast such a large shadow over there, and this is how we always do it, and this has got us to the Rose Bowls, and why would you bring in an outsider to deviate from this?
They play at Barry Alvarez Field at Camp Randall. We have not met Barry Alvarez Field at Camp Randall.
Yeah. And when it doesn't work right away, and there's not the instance, so you're trying something totally different and it doesn't work, there's the natural inclination, like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we breaking from the part where we had a good thing going here? Obviously, the quarterback we saw was not the starter, and he's not a good quarterback. I'm sorry. They have to figure that out. They just have to figure out who they want to be. And I don't know that if Fickell is going to have the support, the buy-in from his fan base, from the alumni of football alumni, from everybody to see it through. I don't know. It's going to be a long off season of soul searching.
Well, that's right. I just want to know, say they go 4-8, 5-7 again next year. Does Fickell get a fourth year?
Yeah,
depends what the temperature feels like.
Yeah, there's so many variables in that. How are they?
How does it look? How does it look? Yeah.
Is the energy there? I think he even said at his recruiting press conference he wants to try a little bit more pro style offense, which I'm sure was music to the ears of everybody that still prays to the altar of Barry Alvarez, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure, but they had. I think, in a way, I got to be careful how I say this, but Bielema was winning the old way. But they were sick of him, right? Like, Bielema left because they were annoyed at some things, which it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Paul Chris literally grew up. I'm pretty sure he was born in the Camp Randall media room. I think he was there at halftime during the game. His dad used to coach there. He was born, if not there, the field house right next door, right? And went to a Rose Bowl and an Orange Bowl. And they decided to move on from him. And there were fans that were like, yeah, that makes sense. Things are getting a little stagnant. They're in a weird, and I listened to Badger Fan Line on my way out to the airport to fly to New Orleans on Friday. And the main question was this the worst Badger football season in your lifetime? And for someone that's 35, it was, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Even though Barry, by the way, check the record, bad early, Rose Bowl, I think maybe another Rose Bowl right away. Then a 5-7, a 6-6. Like there's dips. Like it's hard to just be a 10-win program all the time, especially if you weren't. And they got kind of used to, oh, this is what we do. We're Wisconsin, and no one closes the yearbook over there. So you've got all kinds of former players that they don't, but they trade off of that the rest of their lives, and this is what we do. They do it in basketball too, because they had that run with some Sweet 16s and then the 2 Final Fours, and then they went to Sweet 16 after. Well, then they start having a dip, and all of a sudden, people are mad at Greg Gard. It's like, no, this is what happens. Like just because you went to a Sweet 16 and a Final Four doesn't mean like that's who you are now. You're not Duke or North Carolina. Like it goes in cycles. 99% of college sports programs would take what Wisconsin's done the last 35 years, 35 years, without question. But they get tied up in this is who we are and this is what we do. No, not necessarily. This is there, and there's a new Big Ten now, where you're not just going to roll up and win a Big Ten title going 8-3.
Or Big Ten West
back in the 90s, or you're not going to win the Big Ten West and get there and then get the de facto Rose Bowl. Like that's just not realistic anymore. So it's all happening at a time when the league is changing. It's never been harder to win in the Big Ten. I think you guys will agree because everybody's invested. The portal has leveled the talent field decidedly. It's just so, but I don't think the yearbook stuff has helped them either.
No,
with former and I'm not saying Fickle is the next Bear Bryant. But he did take a team to the playoff. He comes with pretty good pedigree coming from Ohio State. Like he's gone up the right way, right? And so but a lot is happening very quickly for them at Wisconsin. And I'm curious how they all react. They also have media that got used to, the Barry Alvarez and the Jim Leonard and the Bo Ryan. And this is what we do.
Well, that's it. This is an outsider. When you bring an outsider in and it's not magic or it's not instant gratification, there's a pushback of like, well, he's not one of us. This is not working. Like, let's go back to how we were. How we were doesn't exist in modern. The picture's changed. The reality has changed of college football, and so it's. I'll be interesting because have they been hit hard here? Portal, you said, Burnsy, early.
Yeah, they've seen a lot of their younger players and some of their key. Let's see, a couple of their key defensive players. And
were these his recruits initially, or are they holdovers?
It's a mixture of both.
Yeah. Well, that's concerning when it's like your recruits. Like you understand, like if it's guys that have been there and like, you know what, I was recruited by a different staff. We just, whatever. But when it's guys you recruited a year ago or whatever, and now they're leaving too. Now it's. But that team, they looked defeated Saturday. I thought
they looked like a team that had lost 4 straight. And they put up a little bit of a fight early, but once Minnesota got going, they looked defeated. And I think there's a lot of questions and soul searching that's got to happen at Wisconsin here.
Well, and you look at, let's just distill it, because they hung with Oregon, right? That was a great game. Yeah. Oregon really had to play to beat them. Penn State, same thing. Penn State had to beat them with a backup quarterback, but did just enough. Yeah. But let's go back to the Big Ten West days. Minnesota, no contest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gophers pretty much routed them. Iowa boat raced them,
destroyed them.
And then Nebraska 2 weeks ago, as much as PJ tried to tell us it was closer than the score indicated, it was not. It just wasn't. And those are the 3 teams that they always thought they like. Iowa, not as much because that's been more back and forth. Those were the 2 best teams in the Big Ten West for the whole time, right? I know Northwestern jumped up there. But those 2, the season used to be defined by that game for those programs, Iowa and Wisconsin, because usually whoever won that was going to Indianapolis. To get, pretty much woodshedded by those three teams, that's a long, cold winter if you don't have the answers for it coming on the backside. Now they'll have a new quarterback, they'll have a new coordinator, they'll obviously have a bunch of new players. Everybody will, but the temperature, and then the schedule next year, it's like it's not conducive for a bounce back.
No.
It's not conducive.
No.
So to answer your original question, Burnsy, I don't know. I don't like a lot of the stuff, just the vibe of it from you bring a guy in, you make a big splash, you get a guy that's been to the playoff, and that's the new Big Ten title, right? Is get to the playoff essentially more than anything else. And Wisconsin in the last 30 years, I think would have been there 6 times, something like that. So that's really impressive. And that's where you need to get back to. But there's been so much resistance to all of it. And I'm not saying Fickle's done himself any favors, but I don't know what kind of chance he has. Like, he's really going to have to turn the tide here in a big way to make this thing work the way they all want it to work.
Well, and I don't follow, every press conference to know like how his personality is resonating with the fan base. I do know the press conference after he fired his offense coordinator was not a good look.
Right.
That went over like a lead balloon. But I think there's just a feeling of, hey, we've always been good here and now we're not, and it's blame the person who's the new guy, But I thought the Gophers just dominated them in the trenches. I did, particularly their defense line. The quarterback plays got to get a lot better for them.
Well, speaking of angry fan bases, by the way, if Ohio State, and we can get the Ohio State, Michigan fighting, and everybody across college football fighting now.
Yeah,
because everybody's.
We'll talk playoffs next week because we're going to run out of time. Playoffs and Heisman and championship games. I'm not all that interested in any of them, to be honest. Some of them don't have meaning, which is fine. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, we got a lot of college football playoff stuff for next week. But Guardsy, you've been on the sidelines now for 14 years, right?
Correct.
Have you ever seen a Minnesota flag on the sidelines? Because I can't remember one that. Because you have all these people fighting, including after the Ohio State-Michigan game.
Yep.
Is there a flag for Minnesota that size that's easily grabbable?
There's been times where I think they've had a row the boat flag. I want to say they
run out of the tunnel to start the game, but I think that just disappears pretty quickly, doesn't it?
It usually goes, right around midfield where all the headsets are, where Dilly Bardan hangs out. That's usually where a lot of the stuff that they bring out, and sometimes they'll bring out. They'll bring out like a wrench. They'll bring out like balls and chain. They'll bring out whatever the theme is, and it's all. And then the sideline reporter from Network will be like, "Hey, what's with the what's with
sword?
What's with the sword?" I'll be like, "I have no idea." I'm like, I guess I should know that. I'm sure it has some meaning. You're gonna have to ask PJ about it after. I didn't see them practice that this week at practice. No one told me that they were, No one told me that PJ was going to be carrying a live tiger out of the tunnel this week and then putting it behind the bench. I don't know. Like, there's always something weird because it's college football. There's always something weird. But there is usually a row the boat flag typically. I guess I haven't looked, I'll be honest. But I guess we're going to have to now moving forward.
I think they planned one back when they won at Michigan in
05. Mace just talked about it with Dan on the fan.
Yeah, I think Maroney or somebody did. I can't remember.
A fan gave it to Maroney that was at the big house, and Maroney ran out to midfield, and Mace was pissed. Mace brought it up, and that's
Go
ahead.
The one thing that I do appreciate that, and I don't know if it was the two administrations or the Big Ten with the axe. You never used to be behind the bench, and you'd have this storming of the across the field, and that was a recipe for disaster. I don't know that if they had a fight or something that led to it.
Well, I'll tell you, they had a fight.
Keep it. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, but now they put it in the end zone, they bring it out. That's that's the right way to do it. And I give both teams credit that you lose, what's going to happen. The losing team will go to the locker room. The other one's chop down the goalpost. So I'm being a little bit hypocritical here when I say I'm okay with that, because the teams know it, but. The planting the flag, no good comes of that. That you're asking for a brawl. You're just absolutely asking for a brawl. I mean, emotions are high.
Fourth straight loss for Ohio State. Plant the flag. There's mace after the fight, which I thought was incredibly funny. Like, this stupid sport is so funny, and the stuff that doesn't happen anywhere else.
How many fights do we have because of the plant?
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah, and then we had other ones. Like, college football lost its freaking mind this weekend. Like, every game was a fight. It's like, but the planting the flag, you're just asking for trouble. Tell me the background on the axe. What year was that? I thought it was like 5 years ago. Or was it
no, it was a little longer than that. Kill was still coaching here. And first of all, my opinion is here's my opinion on the whole thing. Planting the flag after you win is stupid.
Yep.
The only thing dumber than that is if you lost and you try to stop them from planting the flag. You got to take the L. Like, now, if I'm coaching, and I'm assuming this is PJ's position, just knowing him a little bit, we saw James Franklin grab his players and the flag at USC and say, we don't do this. This isn't what we do, because they were trying to do it. The only thing dumber than planting the flag is trying to fight the team that's trying to plant the flag after they just dragged you for 60 minutes.
Yeah, maybe you should have showed a little bit more fight in the 60 minutes on the field.
And do you know who said that to the Gophers in the end zone when they tried to stop? And by the way, the Gophers stopping Wisconsin from chopping down the goalpost was the dumbest of all time, because that has always been baked in to the tradition of the axe. They've been doing that for since it was bacon, back in 1932. Who said that, Burnsy? What you just said, you had plenty of time to fight during the game. Barry Alvarez, the athletic director at the University of Wisconsin at the time, in the end zone. I'm watching the Gophers trying to stop them from chopping the axe, which is a time-honored part of the bit. They're fighting. They're scrumming. Barry Alvarez is screaming, "You should have fought that hard during the game." I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then Jerry Kill says, "I kind of like this, showed a little fight." No, they didn't, Jerry. No, they didn't. It made you all look stupid. And because I brought that up when I did the tweet about it this week, that what I just said to you guys, someone goes, it reminds me of, because they thought they were trying to get me, as a Wisconsin fan guy. Well, it reminds, just like when the Gophers did the axe thing and didn't let us chop, I go, yeah, that was stupid. And I said it at the time. It was insane. It's dumb. It doesn't feel good. Sometimes in sports, things don't feel good. Chip, you played. Ryan, you played. Chip, you coached. I'm talking to that with my son right now. Like, sports, sometimes it feels terrible. That's what you sign up for.
You lose, take your loss. Yeah.
You take your L, as the kids say, Burnsy, and you go home. You got to take the L and you file it away. And next year, if you're bitter because they planted the flag, maybe that gives you the motivation that you want. But you can't do what Ohio State did. How about the sideline reporter for Michigan, by the way, getting into the mix too? That puts a lot of pressure on me if this ever happens.
You got to start throwing blows.
Yeah. What am I going to do? I'm not.
You're going to fight the other sideline
reporter.
Division
I athlete. What are you talking about?
It's like when the goalies skate out and fight. That's what you got to do. You got to run across and pick off the other sideline. Well, I'm guessing you're going to see every conference come out and outlaw or ban flag planting.
I just think it's stupid.
I don't. Because it's, with the emotions being what they are, what do you think the response is going to be? It's stupid that the losing team does it, but that's what they're going to do. They're going to throw a punt. I mean, it's just, and heaven forbid the outcome is worse than what happened. You could get somebody really hurt doing that.
Sure.
And here's the thing: I like the new kind of thing. It's always happened in the Tennessee-Alabama series, but now other teams are doing it. Gophers do it. Go in the locker room and smoke a cigar with your teammates. Yeah. There you go. Smoke up their locker room. Have a cigar, a victory cigar. That's, but the planting the flag, it's just asking for trouble. Again, the chopping down the goalposts, I'm fine with, because it's
part of
both,
it.
And both teams now understand
when
you lose, you go straight to your locker room, and they do it, and that's part of the deal.
Yeah, you guys could smell that smoke, huh?
I think I turned to Chip and I was like, yeah, they're lighting up in there.
That started a couple of years ago, and I'll tell you that Wisconsin authorities were ready this time around, and
were they?
That was extinguished, not super quick, but there was a fire marshal that was brought in to tell everybody to stop smoking. Because that happened 2 years ago. It's better than the Axe body spray, and they did it after they beat USC. They were doing the cigar. I mean, Burrow started that thing a couple of years ago, right?
Well,
and
it's
made it really cool with LSU and Justin Jefferson.
Well, in the third Saturday of October, Tennessee, Alabama. It's like tradition. Like, they bring boxes of them in the stands. People are doing them in the stands on the field. Whoever wins, that's the first thing you tweet out is like, light up your cigar. I mean, it's just something to do. And it's like, do that, that instead of having a brawl at midfield, which we saw way too much of that in college football. I mean, it by the end of Saturday night, I was texting you guys like, this is driving me crazy. Like, does every game have to end in a fight? Like, what are we doing here? What is it?
And I saw none of it. I was flying home from New Orleans. I'm like, man, I've really missed a lot here after
you missed a peak college football Saturday with emotions everywhere. There's no one reining anybody in.
Well, and even Friday night, Nebraska not shaking Iowa's hands.
How stupid was that?
And Matt Rule did say, I didn't know that happened. And apparently, this is where I'm kind of on Nebraska's side, because apparently Nebraska does something like they do like a prayer circle that they couldn't do at midfield. And then where they went to do it, there was like armed security guards, like giving them crap in Kinnick, which I've also had that happen to me, which really pissed me off. Like,
Why?
the security guards at all these places now. Well, and by the way, nice job, Ohio State guy, my guy at Ohio Stadium, keeping everything in order.
Yep.
Really good job. But I had the wrong pass. I'm glad you were focused on the right thing. I can't wait for next year. I think we go there. Now I'm going to get worked up. But so Matt Rule took responsibility for it and said, that's not what we're about, which did surprise me when I saw the Nebraska players do it. But he also did say, our players were a little annoyed about something that happened before the game, and they took that to the midfield, which they shouldn't have done, but that's why they did it. And I'm going to make sure that never happens again. Like, that's what the head coach should say, is like, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. That's my job. It's a reflection on me. Not shaking hands at the coin toss is idiotic as well. And you're right, Chip. The way you said it is perfect. College football lost its freaking mind. It just did over the weekend. And I like Jay Higgins, the great Iowa linebacker, after the no handshake, he beelined for Matt Rule after the game to shake his hand.
I love that.
And then talked about it after the game, and then chirped about it after the game. He was feeling himself. By the way, most Iowa win of all time, 5 first downs, and they end up winning the game. You just can't quite make it up. Nebraska's got to be thinking, what the hell do we have to do to beat these guys?
5 first
downs. Yeah, 5 first downs, and they won. So anyway, it was a magical couple of days there in our favorite sport.
So Ryan Walters gets fired. My question to you guys would be, Ryan Day's now 0-4. Ohio State is very, very likely to make the playoff. What saves Ryan Day's job at this point heading into the latter part of December here?
Do we think
I don't. This is it. This is so. It's so weird to me because, what's the stat? 1-4 against them, 44-1, or 47-1 against everybody else. So it's like, but you can't lose 4. You can't lose 4 in a row.
And that was a bad Michigan team. They were without Will Johnson, their best defensive player, their best offensive player in Colston Loveland.
It's in his head for sure.
That's the number one thing to me was he gets flustered in those games. Yeah,
the pressure is. But here's the thing: is like I thought Pat Forty had a really good column on it, and SI is like, you probably have to make a move, or you consider it. But would you be shocked if they pull themselves together and go win the national title? No.
And I still think that fan base would be pissed, even if they win a national title because they lost to Michigan. Which, how entitled of a fan base can you be in that aspect?
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to. I'm guessing. You're going to have to win at least 1 game, maybe 2. I don't know. I don't know what his buyout or anything like that is, but it's that game and that opponent is definitely in his head.
Well, and I think it's but when you build it up, and they did all offseason at whatever the price is, Burnsy, $20 million team.
$20 million. Yeah.
20.
That's what we keep hearing. And you say, Ohio State's all in. This is a $20 million team. The governor's off. There are no more excuses now. It filters to the head coach, of course, but I think it also filters to the players. And it's a different pressure now, I'm sure, that they're all feeling now that everybody knows. I mean, we assume Ohio State players have been getting money this entire time, but now everybody knows that they are, and everybody knows how much it is, and everybody knows who came for what. And I'm sure in the business community in Columbus, they're not shy. I'm guessing, the Buddy Garrity's Friday Night Lights are not shy at the Columbus Touchdown Club of telling all their friends how much money they've given to the Bucknuts Collective or whatever it's called, and to get Will Howard or whoever, player XYZ. I'm sure everybody knows what everybody's getting over there, and that's a different pressure too now that players ordinarily don't have to deal with. The financial realities of people are paying you now. Like, it's different. And over there, I always talk about, they come off the national championship. They're 8-0. The Gophers are there. The security guard looks at us as he's letting us in and says, I sure hope we play better this weekend. Like, they'd won like 22 games in a row. And that was the discussion he was having with us as we were going up the elevator. We're like, hey man, we're just trying to get to a bowl here. All right. So can you say this? Like, what are we doing here, man? Like, we're trying to win the West once here and get to Indy, So, but that's a different pressure too. When you build it up and say, we're going all in, we're sparing no expense. Well, guess what? You got to be perfect. So we'll see. Burnsy, to your question, I don't know. I don't, because who's taking the job? Who's getting there? Who's going? Are they bringing Urban back? He's available. What are they going to do?
Is it Marcus Freeman comes over from Notre Dame? Is it Mike Vrabel gets back into the coaching ranks? Is it someone like Matt Campbell? I don't know. I don't know what they would do, or is it just not even with his buyout? Is is Ryan Day the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Chicago Bears or whoever it may be? So I think it's a because that would be a job where I think of heading into the coaching carousel season here of that's going to be like last year it was Saban stepping down and then all of these dominoes then fell from there. I mean, to me, the Ohio State job is absolutely within that same tier of, okay, that job opens. Watch all these dominoes go from there.
For sure. Yeah,
definitely. Final couple of minutes here, because I know we all got to fly. What's the highlight of National Signing Day, Burnsy? Or we'll send everybody to gopherillustrated.com to read your manifesto and to read everything PJ said. I watched that press conference yesterday as well. But what do we need to know about this recruiting class that you want to get out there to get people to Gopher Illustrated?
Yeah, I think they did a good job in state. They've continued to do a better job each of these years. And I think to Fleck's point, these kids were 8-9 years old when PJ took over. And they've had a chance to kind of grow up in a period where Gopher football has been respectable. They've seen some of the runs that they've made. I certainly think that helps the perception of this program in-state, out-state, whatever that may be. And I think that plays a big part in why you're able to land guys like Emmanuel Carmo, a 4-star from Robbinsdale Cooper, who Michigan was beating down his door at the final minutes there. You're able to land the number 2 kid from Caledonia and Ethan Stendel. I mean, you look at it perspective nationally, it's okay. I mean, I will continue to say I think this is the most difficult job in the Big Ten to recruit to. They have the worst 300-mile radius outside of Oregon. And Oregon, I mean, they have so much money they don't even know what to do with. Oregon flipped a 5-star yesterday, Chip, and his quote as to why was, well, Phil Knight's going to help me design a shoe. Like, can you imagine?
It's not real life. I know. It's insanity.
Like, this isn't even in the same realm that you can even try to compete with there. And that's where, again, overall, I think it's okay. I think Flex had better classes, but I think to me, the overarching thing is you're able to keep the best kids in-state home, and I do think that's important.
I no offense. I mean, I know the rankings are, a big thing, but to me, and maybe this is the wrong way to look at it, but I look as much about the portal.
Yes.
In roster building as
especially
and maybe
the next 3 weeks.
Maybe I'm being hypocritical because, but I think anymore you've got to be good in the portal, as we've seen. And the most interesting thing I thought that I read, it came out that I didn't get to hear, PJ, but the fact that they're going to go get a quarterback. When you had a freshman quarterback this year, a true freshman, as your backup over a kid that you brought in with experience, that tells me all I need to know there. They have to. And it may hurt Lindsey's feelings or whoever's feelings, but I think you have to go get a veteran quarterback because you can't have a redshirt freshman and a true freshman be 1 and 2 on your depth chart.
Well, I would tell you 2 things. One, I would set your expectations for whoever that quarterback is exponentially lower than Max Brosmer. Like they have, I will tell you, I've heard they've paid Drake, and there's just no way you have the money for a team like Minnesota where you have finite resources, especially with money, whether that's house settlement, NIL, whatever it may be, to pay multiple quarterbacks and also go get a receiver, a corner, an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman. You're not Oregon. This isn't an unlimited budget. You're not Ohio State. You don't have $20 million. So I expect them to go get a veteran quarterback who has started games. But I think the other thing to me that was so interesting is Fleck was like, yeah, we're going to go get between 10 and 15 guys from the portal, which that's a lot of guys. I mean, we're talking about almost 20% of your roster at that point, which I don't disagree with, but it is going to be fascinating to your point, Chip, where, I mean, signing day is still important. It is, but it's how do they fill some of these holes? Because you need to be like, you're losing your corners, your 2 best receivers, your quarterback, your running back room is going to look a lot different.
Your left tackle.
Every position outside of safety, you can convince me they need to go get a guy. So I am going to be super curious between now and whatever the bowl game is. How do they allocate money? Who do they go get? Because it is going to be fascinating here over the next couple of weeks.
And with the way the Big Ten is right now and how difficult it is, I don't know that you can rely on young guys and say, we're going to get this young guy and he's going to get the experience. And the next year, I think you have to go get veterans. I think it has to be a veteran almost every year.
Yeah. And for a team like Minnesota, like, I don't think you can go get like the I mean, the Tyler Williams and the Christian drivers from blue blood schools are great. But I think if I'm Minnesota, where I need to live is in the FCS and in the group of 5 ranks, like the Max Brosmers, and the Ethan Robinsons of the year, where they might be an inch too short or a tenth too slow or a couple inches not long enough. But we've seen them have a lot of success with guys like that, or even someone like Jack Gibbons, if he went out to the Tennessee
Henderson.
Like that's where I think you need to live, where you can afford them. They're not going to be the prettiest looking kid, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day if them boys can play football.
I'll have you know, Jack Henderson is a handsome man. And his dad, Steve, his mother's beautiful. We saw his dad. We met his dad. You and I, Burnsy. We met him in Pasadena, and then they were at the team hotel on Friday morning. We were getting ready to go to the game, and they're from Louisiana, obviously. And Jack's dad walked by. Daryl and I went outside. I told Jack this, and we did a post-game interview, which was awesome. He had tears in his eyes. So did Quinn Carroll. I encourage people to go find the post-game interviews that I did on the field, not because I'm brilliant, although some people have suggested it. But Quinn Carroll was incredible. Jack Henderson was awesome. Just the emotion those guys had on the field. It was so fun to be a part of that. But his dad walks out, double doors open up, I think. He kind of stands there for a little bit, comes back in. He's like, 2 days ago, I was in Louisiana. The only problem I had was too many mosquitoes. I'm not going to try to do the Cajun drawl, but he goes, I was grilling. He goes, grilling, wearing shorts, and the only problem I had was too many mosquitoes. I said, not going to be many mosquitoes here, sir. No mosquitoes. But that's another good example, though. A guy who's, was going to go to Tulane, if not for, I think, Danny Collins jumping on it right away and saying, come check out Minnesota. And everybody going, huh? Have you ever been there? And Jack saying, I'm coming. Like, those are the guys you got to find. But they've been pretty successful. Jack Gibbons is a great example, right? Abilene Christian, right? Yep. Like, just super productive, come in here and just be a dude. And before the injury, he was playing for the Tennessee Titans. So, and the portal's Monday. It officially opens on Monday.
Officially opens on Monday. Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck, Burnsy. We'll be watching.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Ryan
be
Burns MN on Twitter to check out all of that. And so next week when we talk, let's talk after Tuesday when we have the playoffs, right? It'll be Sunday when they do the playoffs. So anytime we'll talk after. We'll get the playoffs set up. We'll get the Gopher Bowl game. I think all of us kind of think it's going to be Charlotte. We'll see. And then we've got transfer stuff to talk about and who knows what else. But let's figure all that out for next week, boys. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Perfect.
He's Chip Scoggins, who I told yesterday when I saw him would have been appalled at my phone percentage the last couple of days running around. You'd be dead. You wouldn't be here. You would have had some type of episode.
I've been in the hospital.
Yes, that's Chip Scoggins. Read him at the Star Tribune. And remember, if you have any ideas for football across Minnesota, please hit him on Twitter at Chip Scoggins. He's always looking for leads. And Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com. Check him out there. A lot of great work. Perfect time to jump in with Burnsy on the website. Gopher Gridiron Radio was awesome this week as well. Go to Jack's Cafe, jackscafe.com. Come see us on Saturday. If you're going for the breakfast with Santa, I'll be there with my kids. I'll be the one scolding somebody, hopefully in the corner. Hopefully we're not out in front of a bunch of people and trying not to break things in the buffet line. But breakfast with Santa the next 3 Saturdays. Holiday reservations, holiday dining, jackscafe.com. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you next week on the Pair and a Spare podcast.